Yeah, it's basically whenever someone asks a question, like pick it up and we'll go. All right. With the group from USA, we have head coach Chris Gerlufsen, we have Ndewedo Newbury, and then we also have Marcus Williams. You guys have been almost the model of consistency. 20 plus wins. I think it's like 7 of the last 8 years. You bring a good chunk of the roster back from a year ago. Obviously, lose Jonathan Mobo, which is a big loss, but you bring in a bunch of pieces that are going to help kind of like to round that back out. How are you feeling about coming into this year, where the team is, and kind of building off of what you were able to do a year ago?
I'll kick it off for these guys, but no, we're excited. I'd first start by saying to be able to retain the players that we've been able to retain, our core guys. I think when you do that in college basketball, when you've had some success, that's a good starting point. So to have Marcus and Ndewedo, Malik Thomas, and Ryan Beasley all back, that makes me sleep well at night, starting there. And I think we've been able to address some of our holes, through the transfer portal and high school recruiting. So, we've been consistent getting to that 20-win mark, but now it's what's next, and how do we have that breakthrough and become an NCAA tournament team.
Yeah, this was a squad. Obviously, it was just a few years ago. You were in the tournament as an at-large. I think wildly underseeded that year. You guys were definitely better than a 10. But thinking about like what you guys need to do this year, like one of the maybe the more glaring things that happened a year ago was that you had some great opportunities and they kind of slipped through your fingers, whether it be Utah State, you think about the Boise State game. What are some things that you guys were able to work on in the offseason that can maybe like prevent those not really prevent those from happening, but like thinking about like how you can better take advantage of those opportunities?
I'd say experience. Definitely bringing on our core guys who've been in those positions. Now, we made those, had those experiences. Now that, when we turn around and those chances come up again, we'll be able to act accordingly.
Piggyback off what he said, experience is everything. You got to go through those trials and tribulations, to figure out, how to win in those circumstances. And then also we do special situations in practice a lot. So just going through those also help you in crunch time figure out what you need to do to execute.
Yep. Again, like a lot of pieces come back. You obviously the two of you think about Ryan Beasley, think about Malik Thomas. Like I keep looking at this group and like you guys have maybe one of the deeper backcourts coming back in the WCC. With the continuity that you guys have in the backcourt, like kind of Marcus, like trying to talk about like just like the connectivity that you guys have and the opportunity that you guys see kind of moving forward with the group you still have on the hilltop.
I feel like we're very well connected. We know each other's game, at a high level on both ends, so we can pick up whatever each other lack, and we're also close off the court, like we're real connected as a team in general. But I just think having that experience, like we keep talking about, as chemistry and just trial and tribulations of tough games, I think as a backcourt, we can kind of control the tempo of a game. So as us knowing each other and just having a great feel, we'll be able to control games throughout the whole game.
Now, you have obviously a good number of newcomers as well. Talk about like how they've been able to fit into this point. Thinking about like Carl Lingard and like how he's been able to slide in. Obviously, like he's kind of like the quote replacement for Jonathan. Like how he's fit in, and also like how the others have kind of gelled.
Yeah, I think number one, they have great guys to look at, and emulate. And these guys have had a lot of success in our program, and so Carlton is viewed as being a Jonathan replacement, but there is no singular replacement to Jonathan Mobo. And Carlton, I think, is going to be a really unique player to watch with his ability to stretch the floor, to shoot at a high rate for a 7-foot big guy. He's a different type of player, but should provide some rim protection, rebound at a high level. But it's going to be fun to tinker with his skill set from an offensive standpoint, because I think he has the ability to give some teams some matchup problems with his ability to shoot the ball.
thinking about the schedule you guys have, you're able to put together another really good non-conference schedule, a lot of great opportunities, another game at Chase Center against Memphis. As you've kind of like been able to put the schedule together, what like where do you think like maybe like is this a better challenge than you guys had a year ago, kind of equal to that? Because it does feel like maybe this one's kind of ramped up even just a little bit more.
Yeah, I would say that was intentional for sure. We wanted to make sure we had enough on our resume if we did achieve to the level that I think we're capable of, that when we get to March, we have some really quality non-conference games to point to. And these guys want that challenge as well. I think obviously we want to elevate our program, but it's about elevating our conference as well, and heading into conference play with the highest net. And don't always do that if you don't challenge yourself in the non-conference. So I think we have some really, really key both early season and late non-conference games on our schedule that could help us.
Definitely, like from the outside, like you guys have had so many resources like kind of like funneled into the program. Obviously, like new basketball facility opened up just a couple of years ago. You're thinking about like just like the travel and everything else. But one I think that is almost maybe an underrated one, and you guys can speak to this better than I can, is the fact that Bill Cartwright is around all the time. What has kind of like what's it like having him around, and what's maybe something that you always kind of like take with you of like that a piece of advice or like something that you take kind of day to day?
Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of Bill Cartwright. But him being around just definitely speaks to the legacy at USF and obviously what he's accomplished here many years ago. And he's just a pleasure to be around. So he also helped me with my development in my game a little bit too. So glad to have him around.
I would just add to have a guy around on a daily basis that is a legend on the hilltop. Sometimes his voice or his messaging carries a little bit of different weight than mine does, especially with the big guys. And he's a really good resource for me and just a great guy, great representative of what a Don is.
And we're talking a lot about that history that USF has and the history like Bill Cartwright, obviously, like think about like even you go back further and further, like Bill Russell, like Casey Jones and all of that. When you talk with some of like interact with some of the alums who obviously like were maybe not quite that far back, but remember kind of like the glory days of USF, and obviously I think we're kind of like growing toward what could be those same things with this squad and with the program the way it is today. How do you kind of like put that in perspective, like where this program is maybe now versus maybe where it was, say, 15, 20 years ago?
That's a good question. I think number one, as a staff and my job as a head coach is to make sure that these guys understand what the tradition and the history behind USF basketball is. And if they don't know that, they might not appreciate the position they're in as much. And so as much as we can have them interact with guys who have come before them, or just simply, educate them on what winning looks like, on the hilltop. And these guys, I think, have done a really good job of grasping onto that and embracing that and understanding that, my job as a head coach and their job as players is to make sure that we do right by the people who came before us. And we try to do that in everything we do. And USF's a special place for sure.
All right. I'm gonna ask, actually this might be a good one for everybody, because I'm starting to think of just like, again, being in the city like has its own unique experience and everything else. And one thing I was thinking about was there's a lot of great ice cream places, like which is actually the go-to ice cream spot? It's like as a Byright, Humphrey Slocum, like Mitchell's, like I'm
Yeah, I'm not really a ice cream kind of guy, but I like the one on Hay Street, Ben and Jerry's.
Oh,
we don't really have that in England, so it was pretty cool.
True.
It was pretty cool.
True. You got the Cherry Garcia or something like that.
I'm insomnia cookies. I'm more of like a big insomnia cookie.
Which style cookie is it?
The confetti cookie. Yeah, big
there
confetti cookie guy. Macadamia nut too.
That's a good call. Thinking about just where you guys were just a year ago, what do you feel like is kind of like obviously the next step is getting back to the NCAA tournament. That is the goal. But what has it kind of like been in the locker room? What's kind of like the vibe of like sort of like how do we get there? Like, what is the next step that we have to be able to take that gets us over the hump? And we talked a little bit about obviously like some of the drills and everything else, but what's maybe been different personality wise this team versus maybe a year
ago? No, I think sometimes just the experience of playing in those meaningful games, that doesn't mean that you're going to get over the hump the next time it happens. And so you have to take those experiences and use them in the correct fashion.
Yeah.
And so I would hope if you ask these guys, I'm probably a little bit more on edge about certain things. I think we've done a good job of recognizing what some of the key kind of points that we need to improve on are. If you look at our foul rate a year ago, we were one of the highest in the country at fouling and putting people on the free throw line. Still had a top 50 defense, but what would that have looked like if we had limited some of those fouls, especially in winning time? And then we need to get to the free throw line at a higher rate offensively. We were efficient offensively, but need to generate some easier free points at the free throw line. So things like that. I think we have a very clear-cut way of affecting those if we use it the right way. So those are some of the small things that we're trying to do from a program standpoint.
All right. Is there, thinking about like all the additions of Washington State and Oregon State into the conference this year, we know that there's going to make the league more competitive. We know the add that those two have. I want to talk about just like what those trips to Corvallis or the trip to Pullman is going to kind of be like, or have you made those trips before, and how do you see kind of like those matchups? Maybe not necessarily the matchups yet because I haven't looked at film or anything like that. We don't know what those teams look like, but just thinking about those two squads in the WCC and just how it adds competitiveness to the league and gets it a little deeper.
Yeah, it adds a lot of competitiveness. There we go. Okay, there we go. Adds a lot of competitiveness, just boost the conference. They're coming from the Pac-12, which is a Power 5 conference. And personally, I've played at Oregon State before, twice actually. And, it's not the easiest place to play, but not the hardest at the same time. And I just look forward to the competition, never running from a challenge. And that's the biggest thing, really, take it head on.
All right, we'll wrap it there. Thanks a lot, guys, for hopping on, and definitely catch up down the road.